Variable Geo is a strange series. Only the anime ever made it to America. It's become somewhat of a cult classic. The idea behind it is that it's an all-women's fighting tournament where all the participants have to also be waitresses at family restaurants, and the losers have to strip. Needless to say, this is one of those animes that starts with a bizarre premise, and as such, it's kind of hard to consider it, like, legitimately good in terms of the narrative and all that. But it does take itself incredibly seriously, and for what it is, it does it very, very well. The fight scenes are relatively plentiful and actually incredibly well animated and well choreographed. The artwork looks identical to the source material. It's decently paced, though like many anime, the longer it goes on, the worse it gets. The first episode easily has the best fight scenes and the best pacing, whereas the second episode is kinda the third one, it kinda starts to peter out. Really, the very first fight against June is way better than the last confrontation, which basically turns into a whole lot of projectile blasts and lasers flying everywhere and crap. Really, whether you like it or not, I honestly think Variable Geo may well be one of the better fighting game-based animes. I mean, the fight scenes are honestly way better choreographed, at least in the first episode, and unlike something like Battle Arena Toshinden, or really a striking amount of fighting game animes, the characters look exactly the way they do in the source material. The art is spot on. I really wish I could say the same thing about Battle Arena Toshinden. You have no clue how much that annoys me. I love the art in Toshinden, but then the Toshinden anime looks completely off. What the crap, people? Yes, that's right. Variable Geo is actually based on a series of fighting games, many of them pornographic in nature, with your opponent taking off their clothes and more when you beat them. The first one was released on the PC 98, and it wasn't very good. It had only 6 different playable characters, the animation was incredibly choppy, the controls were sluggish and unresponsive, with inputs sometimes getting lost in the crappy animation. It really wasn't a very good game. It did eventually get a sequel, Variable Geo 2 Bout of the Kabbalistic Goddess, which was significantly improved. The animation was much better, owed partially to the fact the game had not one but 2 tremble breast supervisors. I mean, seriously, that's an important job. You don't want to leave your tremble breasts unsupervised. On top of that, it feels a little more combo-y and noticeably more responsive, but I wouldn't call it completely responsive. Like a lot of PC 98 games, it's still pretty darn choppy. I had difficulty getting Erina, Elirin, Eleanor, whatever you call the bunny girl. I had trouble getting her moves to come out at all, though I really didn't need them due to the fact that the inadvertent combos I was pulling off felt way too damaging. But on the flip side, there were a lot of moves that had way too much animation, leaving you open for attack. Again, it really wasn't a very good game. It was around this time, though, that it was ported to the PC engine, aka the TurboGrafx, as Advanced Variable Geo, which looks much the same with a lower color count, and this is the one I really haven't been able to get my hands on and try, but it doesn't look like it's particularly good, though I'm sure it's an improvement in spite of the graphics. The one most people have probably played, though, is Super Variable Geo, available on the Super Famicom, Super Nintendo, whatever you want to call it, the Japanese Super Nintendo, that one, which actually removes all the pornography from the game as just a straight-up fighting game. To its credit, once again, the sprite work is actually pretty darn good, especially remembering this is a Super Nintendo game. The backgrounds look great, the characters look pretty darn good, but really, it's subpar at best. It really isn't anything special. It's kinda maybe Street Fighter 2-ish, but something still feels off. It still isn't quite right. It's hard to put my finger on, but maybe it's just the fact that it's old, the fact that it really hasn't been brought into the more combo-centric generation. It's just aged badly. I'm not sure, but really it doesn't feel all that great. However, then you have Advanced Variable Geo, or Advanced VG as they sometimes call it, on the PS1 and Saturn, of which there's a lot of confusion surrounding them. Many people say that it's just a port of the PC Engine TurboGrafx game, and that the Saturn version actually still has the porn scenes in it, whereas the PlayStation version cut them out. Both of these statements are kind of false. First of all, you can plainly see that the graphics are way better on Sega Saturn and PlayStation. This is not a port, this is a legitimate upgrade from the PC Engine release, though the story mode is exactly the same. As for the pornographic content, unless I missed a secret handshake in the Sega Saturn release to enable it or something, and trust me, I checked the options menu just for you guys, I really don't care about it, but yeah, no, it's not exactly there. I mean, they feature an image from the second game on PC 98, but it is heavily censored compared to those versions, and it's just that one singular image. So rumors of the Saturn release still having the pornographic content are greatly exaggerated, in spite of the little advisory warning sticker on the Saturn release. That's what that little green box is, by the way. But is it any good? Still not really. The game feels way too slow, though you can actually adjust the game speed in arcade mode. Kicking it up to 5, though, is a little ridiculous and doesn't quite work. But kicking it up exactly 1 notch to level 2 actually makes it a good bit more playable, but it still isn't anything to write home about. Something still feels off, missing, not right. And most notably, the bunny! The bunny's friggin' 3-hit Rekka-Ken combo has this weird delay after the 3rd hit that reminds me of Mortal Kombat Deception, where you're in your idle stance, it looks like you should be able to move, but your inputs just plain aren't registering. Little hiccups like this really hurt the game. It's playable, and considering how well presented the story mode is, I'm sure some people might want to look into it, but it's mediocre at best, and mostly pretty darn subpar. There's nothing really noteworthy about it. Is there any good variable Geo game? The answer? Oh yeah. Because after this, they made Advanced VG2, the direct sequel to Variable Geo, which is completely unrelated to Variable Geo 2, Bout of the Kabbalistic Goddess. Having only ever been released on the PS1, Advanced VG2 is completely and utterly devoid of any pornographic content. However, the porn has been replaced by something much better. Actually good gameplay! And I don't just mean, oh, it's alright, it's okay. I mean, it's a legit fighting game. Evo-grade, combo-tastic, good-ass stuff. Tight, responsive controls, a real combo system, super moves, alpha counters, super jumps, super cancels. In fact, it has target combos, and according to one of my friends, may well be one of the first 2D fighters to feature OTGs. This is a good, legit, real fighting game now. It is actually seriously good, and easily one of the best PS1 exclusive fighters. I know I said that before with Gundam Battle Assault 2, and I stand by it. Once again, many of the fighting games on the PS1, the Sega Saturn, were ports of arcade games. As such, far into the future, there's no real point in revisiting them because either there have been better ports since then, or you could just emulate them and they're much better than the PS1 release. As such, it's those PS1 exclusives, the experiences you can only get on the PS1 that really stand out. And Advanced VG2 is one of those. There's also a game called VG Custom, or Variable Geo Custom, on the PC, which does use assets from Advanced VG2. However, that game actually recycles assets from a bunch of different variable geo games and duct tapes them together really, really poorly to make something that's almost advanced VG2, but not quite. It certainly has some merit to hardcore variable geo nerds, but not really anyone else. It's like a pale imitation of advanced variable geo 2, what with it inexplicably lacking a super meter. I don't know what's up with that. Anyway, as I mentioned, the game plays great. It is a significant improvement over all the other variable geos. It actually feels like a real fighting game. Again, tight responsive controls, plenty of systems, awesome comboing. Seriously, hop on YouTube, search up variable geo or advanced VG2 combos. Search them up, you will find some absolutely nuts-ass shit. This game is good stuff. I will say that, yes, the characters are a little on the derivative side. Maybe not in their design, but certainly in their moveset. It's very clear that the main character of most of the series, Yuka Takeuchi, is basically the Ryu of the game. At the same time, Kaori, the one with the glasses, she actually plays a lot like King from KOF. And I can't quite place Saki's fighting style. It's a little bit of Vice, a little bit of Iori. I know I've seen that stance somewhere before, but I just can't place it. As with many fighters, these characters do have movesets inspired by other fighting games. However, there is at least a little bit of uniqueness in the fact that they're all women and all waitresses. That's, a little bizarre. I will also say the game is most likely completely broken. The combo system is pretty loose. Once you have your opponent in the air, chances are you can juggle the crap out of them. It doesn't seem to have the same kind of limitations some later fighting games would implement in order to prevent you from going absolutely hog wild. Here, no, you can go absolutely hog wild, have fun. Again, look up those combo videos and you will see crazy stuff. Having said that, I've mentioned this in a few other fighting game reviews, a lot of fighters have crazy broken things and ridiculous combos that you can pull off that do way too much damage. I'm not really sure if it truly unbalances the game. Really, playing it, all the characters seem pretty darn functional as fighting game characters. They all seem relatively balanced, with two exceptions. One of them is Manami, who I think is kind of the Dan of the series, based on her appearances in story mode. Most of the time, she's portrayed as being utterly incompetent, really can't quite do anything right. And in fact, in this game, when you fight her in the story mode, she has to disable your special moves in order to win, which is a really irritating fight. The other one, strangely enough, would be Yuka Takeuchi. Maybe it's just me. I admit I'm not, super high level in this game, so it's very probable that I've missed something, but she just doesn't seem all that good. I mean, again, she's basically Ryu, except instead of a hurricane kick, she has sort of this sliding forward dash kick thing, which seems way less viable than it was in previous games, where it was incredibly overpowered. Here it's still good, but not really that good. Her uppercut is alright, I guess, and her projectile is really her only standout feature, but there's a lot of characters that have projectiles, sometimes even better projectiles. And really, in this game, projectiles don't really mean much if you're anywhere beyond scrub-level play. On the flip side, there's newcomer and new main character, Tamao, who is kind of the Sakura to Yuka's Ryu, and as such, she plays very Ryu-ish as well. Fireball, uppercut, hurricane kick, except hers is an actual hurricane kick. Her uppercut hits multiple times, and while her fireball may not have the same range, again, it's not that useful. And I think her normals honestly feel a good bit better. She seems like a way more viable character, at least in terms of rushdown and combo. Again, I'm not super high level in this. I have no clue what the tiers actually look like, so it is possible that I've missed something. It's also worth mentioning the dancing girl. A lot of these characters are basically using the same sprites from the first Advanced VG, just with some enhancements, a few animation changes, and some different frames here and there. But this lady has been completely overhauled, and thank friggin' goodness, all of her other sprites look friggin' stupid. It's great to see her actually portrayed the way she should be. This looks way more like the character. I bring her up, though, because her moveset is kind of bizarre in a way, in the fact that all of her moves actually have pretty lengthy animations, and they come out quickly, and they hit many, many times. However, if you whiff with them, wow, are you open? Because, again, lengthy friggin' animations. These are probably some of the longest attack animations I've seen, like, from a special move in a fighting game character. It feels a little awkward, I admit. However, I wouldn't call that a bad character so much as a weird gameplay design choice. She definitely still feels pretty darn viable, as when those moves hit, they're pretty freaking devastating. Of course, I should mention that story mode, shouldn't I? There is a standard mode where you can pick any character, and they all have their own unique character endings. In fact, the game has 2 different endings for each character. I'm not really sure what triggers what ending you get. However, there's also a central story mode, which this time does not focus on Yuka Takeuchi, but rather Tamao, a girl who saw Yuka fighting on TV in the previous Variable Geo tournament, and instantly became a raving fangirl, joined the tournament, and as such is desperately trying to find Yuka in order to fight her. However, Yuka seems to have mysteriously vanished, and fighting through many of her old opponents, she slowly catches on to what's going on with her, finding her and getting a chance to challenge her, like she's always dreamed. The presentation in the story mode isn't quite as good as the previous Advanced Variable Geo, but it's still rather nice with lots of good stills and characters talking all over the place, and it makes a solid follow-up. Like I said, it opens with clips from the anime as a flashback. So watching the anime and then immediately playing Advanced VG2 is perhaps the best Variable Geo experience you could possibly ask for. The game is really, really strikingly solid. So that raises the question, what are my complaints with it? Well, my number one complaint, I know this is kind of silly, but I'm really not a fan of a lot of these backgrounds. They look kind of like they're done in a completely different art style. They're a little out of place, especially the background characters. Really, I only think the dance club truly looks right, as some of them have way too much detail in them. I think some of them have a little bit of CG in them as well, and there's weird over-detailing here and there, which at times can make it a little harder to see your character than it should be. Never enough to truly hurt the game. I've certainly seen worse instances of this, but it is enough to be a little distracting and make the game look kind of busy. I really don't think the backgrounds look very good. Initially, I was not a fan of the music, but after actually grabbing the other entries in the series and playing through them, I found there's a lot of returning character themes, and they've started to grow on me. Much of the time they feel a little out of place, but they do work. They're okay fight music. I did mention my questions about character balance. Yuka and Manami don't feel like they're as good as the rest of the cast in this game, and I do find that questionable. And of course, we have some very loose combo mechanics that let you get away with all sorts of BS, but I find that to be a really difficult thing to complain about. In fact, I think the only other thing I could complain about is that the sprites don't look as good as the previous game, at least not the Saturn release of it, which is the one I played. It seemed like they had more shading, and they certainly had way more animation, especially Arena Elrilin, the bunny, that one, who was noticeably bouncier in that game and had a slightly lengthier wind pose. Look, I don't know if there were budget cuts, they had to fire people, or if someone was just sleeping on the job, but either way, it's very clear that these tremble breasts were unsupervised. Also, I know it's pointless to complain about the AI in a fighting game, as real fighting games are played against other human opponents, and the computer is generally agreed to be universally stupid no matter what fighting game you play. However, I don't usually notice just blatantly obvious patterns in the AI, Except in this series, it seems this is actually a recurring problem. I know when I beat the first game in order to do this review, I saw the boss just spamming her charge attack, which was really annoying me, but then I realized that was all she did, so I just sat there, crouched, waited until she did her charge attack, and punished on recovery. She'll then, stumble around, maybe try to throw out a few punches, and then, oh, guess what? Do the charge attack again. Gee, I wonder if I'll be punished this time. Yes, you will. You're stupid, End Boss. You're really freaking stupid. And this, unfortunately, carries into this game as well. It doesn't seem like the opponents actually get any harder or stronger as you progress. It seems like each one just has their own set AI. As such, it's very probable that one of the fights before the end boss will be much, much harder. Most likely Kaori. She seems to have the best AI. The computer and her moveset just sort of groove with one another, making her a really irritating fight. Whether she's your first fight, your second fight, or your second to last fight, Kaori is probably going to be your most vicious opponent. On the flip side, Satomi really, really spams her moves. It is blatantly obvious. You'll see her flying up in the air and slamming down again and again and again, and it's kind of stupid. And depending on what tools you have to deal with, that will determine how annoying that fight is. With some characters, I actually had a bit of difficulty there, but with other characters, it's just that fight always disappoints me, especially because that's the other decent background too. I kind of like Satomi as a character even, but wow, well, fighting her just feels dumb. Again, I have a hard time actually commenting on the real balance of the game, as I have yet to get a chance to play this against a human opponent. Don't really have anyone I can con into playing this with me. I have a very difficult time convincing any of my local friends of doing that. There's no real way to play it online, so I'm left high and dry just sort of making guesses. But as you can see, I don't really have any major legitimate complaints with this game. Most of it is just nitpicks and minor things that kinda sorta irritate me, like the backgrounds, but not really. All in all, there's not a lot to complain about here, because this is a really good fighting game. Tight responsive controls, plenty of perfectly functional subsystems, sizable movesets, decently varied characters, a nice story mode, 2 endings per character in the standard mode. This is a good fighter, and I do actually recommend it. And as such, I give it a 4 out of 5. So if it's so awesome, why isn't it getting a 5 out of 5? Well, the answer is, of course, the fact that it's not doing anything majorly different or revolutionary. It's not a fighting game that's breaking big new ground. It's just doing a lot of things that have been done before or since very, very right. There's nothing that makes it mechanically super unique, other than its crazy premise of being an all-female fighting tournament where all of the women are also waitresses. That's still a little weird. So if you dig the gimmick, that's definitely a plus, but even if you don't dig the gimmick, even if you're not a fan of the anime, you think it's kinda crap, give this game a chance, because it is actually really good. But wait, how the heck did Variable Geo go from being rather garbage to being something really good? What caused that? Was it actually just the steady evolution of the series, which you can definitely see? Or was there some outside factor? I repeatedly hear people saying that the same people who made Asuka 120% also made this game. However, I have a hard time corroborating this, as unfortunately the credits to Advanced VG2 are completely in Japanese. I can't read Japanese, so I have no clue who actually worked on it. The one thing they do have is Takehiro Kimura did art in one of the Asuka 120% games and also did art here. He also did art for Godanner, which is my favorite anime of all time. I talked about the game based on that. And he worked on Better Man and Gao Gaigar. Basically, it seems like everything I like was a product of Takehiro Kimura. Funny how that works. But I have absolutely no clue if any of the Asuka 120% staff actually worked on this game. Many people consider Variable Geo and Asuka 120% to be rival games, so if they actually had the same staff, that would be a little weird. It's clear that it's a different company, but that doesn't always mean things. The real question is if our good friend Masaki Ukyo had anything to do with this, that being the person who is basically responsible responsible for all of the games that play like Guardian Heroes in one way or another. Or if maybe it was his friend. It's really hard to tell. Many of the improvements could probably be credited to the fact that the console releases of Variable Geo were handled by a completely different company. The PC-98 and later PC releases were handled by Giga. However, the console releases were handled by a company called TGL, which actually produced a few other actual legitimate games. And I think they're probably most responsible for the drastic improvements in quality. So this does raise the question, though, whatever happened to the Variable Geo series anyway? Well, they did actually make a few other entries, however they were all on PC and handled by Giga. One of them I mentioned earlier, which was Variable Geo Custom, which recycles content from the various super advanced Variable Geo games of the past, and slaps it all together to make a thing that's almost Variable Geo 2, but not, and it's kind of questionable. There's also VG Max, a strangely super deformed entry in the Variable Geo series, yet somehow still pornographic, which I have not yet had the pleasure of playing. It looks like it might be legitimately good, but I'll have to get back to you on that once I get it up and running. After that, though, there was some kind of rock, paper, scissors game, a visual novel style game, and then there's like a new hentai anime with a completely new cast and crap character designs that look like complete and utter garbage, and oh geez, I think I'm gonna barf. Yeesh, maybe it's just me, but I hate modern anime character designs. Either way, though, that's the Variable Geo series. Perhaps you should give Advanced VG2 a chance. Either way, this is Gel, and you've been GameBabbled. See ya, and remember, don't leave those tremble breasts unsupervised.